All right, we've got a full agenda tonight, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. My name is Tony Johnson. I'm General Manager for the Kingstowne Residential Owners Corporation. I'll be the moderator for tonight's event. Thank you all very much for coming out. Again, it's great to see such a turnout for a community event like this. We've been seeing good turnouts recently, and that really makes my heart very warm. So I appreciate that. Tonight, we have three very special guests with us, all candidates for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. In alphabetical order, we have Mr. Paul Beran, Rodney Lusk, and Mark Welch. The rules of conduct for this evening: in a neighborly spirit, all individuals must be respectful of attendees, the moderator, and all candidates. Questions have been prepared ahead of time with input from the Board of Trustees and the community. All questions posed to the candidates will be specific and nonpartisan. Attendees must practice active listening, which includes, but is not limited to, refraining from interrupting the moderator or candidates. Please do not exhibit preference for a candidate and refrain from outbursts. Those who do not abide by these rules will be asked to stop and, if necessary, asked to leave. General guidelines for the debate are as follows. Thank you, Chris. Each candidate will begin by rolling a set of die at the start of the event to determine an order of candidates will respond to questions. So we've already done that. Supervisor Lusk will be going first, Mr. Beran second, and Mr. Welch last. And then we'll rotate as we go through the evening. Questions from the moderator will be directed to all candidates, and each candidate will be allotted 3 minutes to answer a question. A timer will be utilized and enforced by the moderator. The candidates are not permitted to ask each other questions which are irrelevant to the moderator's original question. And if the candidate's response has a direct connection to another candidate's position, for example, the respondent names another candidate or position outright, then said candidate in question may offer no more than a 1 and 30-second rebuttal statement. To open, we're going to ask for the candidates to do introductions. Introductions are 5 minutes and should cover: what is your full name? How long have you lived in Franconia? What is your professional background? How have you been active in the community outside of political office? What do you like best about the Franconia community? What do you see as the top 3 challenges in the community? What is your vision for the Franconia district? What is your top priority for Franconia district that you're willing to advocate for on our behalf? And how do you plan to work with the Board of Supervisors on behalf of the district? I know it's quite a bit, but we'll ask Supervisor Lusk to start, please, if you could start the timer.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'll start by saying I'm delighted to be here and to be your representative on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. I'll give a little background on myself. I'm a native Virginian. I grew up in the city of Alexandria, attended T.C. Williams High School where I graduated, went on to the University of Virginia. And after graduating from there, I've spent my entire career here in Fairfax County government. This is a place that I love and I'm committed to making better. I've had the opportunity to serve this community in a number of ways. I served as a planning commissioner under then Dana Kaufman and under then Jeff McKay, and I served for eight years, where I worked on a number of pretty important planning and other exercise for this community. Additionally, I served on the Park Authority and helped with the Embark Richmond Highway plan. I also was a member of the Southeast Fairfax Development Corporation, helping to do some of the redevelopment along the Richmond Highway corridor. I have 2 daughters who are products of the Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm delighted to say that my oldest did graduate from college this past May, and she's working gainfully in Bethesda in a full-time job. My second daughter is going to graduate next year. She's already gotten her early action acceptance to Virginia Tech, so I'm pretty excited about that, even though you heard I said I went to the University of Virginia. So it's a little tough for me. But she's also going to apply to UVA, so we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. So again, thinking about this district, we've had a number of areas that I've been pretty focused on. So to be frank and honest, affordability of housing for those who are seniors, those who've committed their lives to this community, who've helped build it. I want to make sure that they can continue to live in this county. Second, thinking about those who are new entrants into the workforce, thinking about my own daughters and others who struggle to try to find a way to afford housing. And let's be perfectly frank, we've got to be able to provide housing for our workforce in order to be competitive and to meet the needs and the challenges of the companies that are locating here. Additionally, I'll say, thinking about the revitalization, I mentioned the Richmond Highway corridor, but I've been very focused in Springfield as well. There are a number of buildings that have been dilapidated and empty for over 10 years in Springfield. And what I've done over the last 2 years is to call those owners doggedly, week after week after week. And we finally gotten them to come to the table and say that they are ready to consider doing something different with those vacant parcels. Additionally, we've been very focused on trying to help our communities address some of the issues that they have relative to transportation, trying to fix sidewalks, trying to fix trails, trying to make sure that the community, the amenities that we have in place in this community are the best, and ensure that we have safety for our kids as they're walking to school, safe routes to school. So important. As a result of that, I've been a very active member on the board relative to making sure that we have money for pedestrian and other spot improvements. And we've been able to pull now 56 million to support those efforts over the last couple of years. And we have a target to get to 100 million in the next 2 more years. So you'll see more projects in our district as a result of that. And then last, I'll say, thinking about the difficulty for many as it relates to, the cost of, meeting some of the demands to live in this county. And that's not just on the affordable housing side, but thinking about those who live in their housing and are paying their taxes and are seeing those increments year after year. I'm committed to looking for ways to expand the commercial tax base to ensure that we have more industrial and more commercial development so that we can make sure we can offset that residential burden, because that burden, unfortunately, is a structural issue within the county's budget, which is really predicated on the way the taxes are administered here in this county because of the state. The state takes most of our payroll taxes, it goes down to Richmond, and then they get to reallocate it. We don't get much of that money back. I want to make an argument that we should get 1% of that payroll tax coming back to Fairfax County. If I'm elected your supervisor again, I commit to continue to serve and support you to make this the best community in all of Fairfax County. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Beran.
Good evening. Hello, there you go. Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Paul Beran. I have been a resident here of the Franconia community since 2020 when my wife and I moved. She actually had been working here in the DMV area since 2016. I moved to join her in 2020 once her job became permanent. She works for Congress. My background is simple. I've been marketing for 55 years. I started when I was 5 years old, I think. No, actually, I started as a radio disc jockey back in 1969 in Pittsburgh, and I kind of grew through the industry. I've seen the industry change quite a bit, but one thing is for sure, I learned that there are marketing solutions for virtually every problem. Believe it or not, there really are, and I can show that to you. I even hope to prove that tonight here. But in further detail, I have been active outside of the community. Politically, yes, I have, but also I've been very active in the church. I actually conduct a Bible study every Thursday night at my home, and I have for 2 years. What I like best about Franconia is that it is a melting pot of many different cultures. I used to think Pittsburgh, which is my hometown, was that. But where you have Pittsburgh meet, we've got people from all over the world settling right here. And I love that about this area. And I see the top 3 challenges to our community being safety, taxes, and education. The safety, of course, is the primary. We need to address the fact that we don't have enough police officers to keep us all safe. We need to address the fact that in many communities throughout Franconia, people are apathetic about this area. They say, you know what, as soon as I get out of here, I'm leaving. We need to involve the participants, the people that live here in the process of enforcing our laws. Do you know we have a tip line, problem solvers in the county? It's actually not very active right now. I tried to call it today. So we need to energize that, get the people, give them an opportunity to really report crime quickly and easily and to give an anonymous tip. I understand there are awards given for tips that lead to an arrest. Also, my vision for Franconia District includes bringing new revenue sources into the county so that we don't always have to go back to the taxes. We can, in fact, share some of our costs with corporations. And I have several plans for that. And I hope to talk about what I have in store for your beautiful lake here in that area as well. And of course, my top priority for the district is safety. I hear every day of problems that are occurring, including carjackings and assaults, and certainly lots of larceny and shoplifting. We need to address that in a big way. And that'll be one of my first challenges when you elect me as your supervisor. And one of the things that I have already introduced to the area to bring new prosperity back to this district is on US 1. There's a BRT project. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's 6 miles of redevelopment. I would like to propose the Great American Walk of Fame, using the sidewalks that are already bought and paid for and going to be installed over the next 10 years. I would like to turn that into essentially a patriotic version of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But instead of celebrating actors and actresses who play heroes, I would like to celebrate the men and women who actually lived and died for our country. That'll bring people in from all over the country to see our latest offering. In fact, it's been described as the next national monument right on US 1. So these are some of the things that I hope to introduce: marketing solutions for our area, branding that'll help to make sense of the fact that we changed our name last year from Lee to Franconia. I would like to give it a branding approach. I have about a minute left, and I'll tell you what it is real quick. I asked my real estate agent when we bought our home something special about this area. And she said, historically, this is Washington's backyard. And I thought, wow, if we were going to come up with a brand, that would be it. So welcome to the District of Franconia, Washington's backyard. Live, work, and play right here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Welch?
Thank you very much.
Maybe pull a little closer to you.
I don't think the light's on. Is the green light? Yeah, I didn't see it. Yeah.
All right, good. All right, thank you very much for the invitation to be here tonight. Again, my name is Mark Welch, and I'm running as an independent candidate. When I'm out canvassing, one of the questions I get asked most often is, why are you running as an independent? And like many people, I'm disillusioned by the two-party system. I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm a social moderate. And I don't find that there's a place for me anymore in the two major parties as they move to the extremes. I've lived in Franconia for about 5 years, but I've lived in the county for over 30 years. I moved here to take a job with the Navy. My wife and I raised 3 children, all of whom graduated from Fairfax County Public Schools and went on to graduate from Virginia public universities. So I'm a firm believer in providing the necessary funding to operate a first-class school system, but I'm not a believer in automatically rubber stamping the proposed school budgets. FCPS spent $3.3 billion in fiscal year 23. The current budget is $3.8 billion. Does anyone in this room believe that FCPS will spend an additional $500 million, $500 million, educating essentially the same number of students this year? I used to live in the Mount Vernon district until a developer came along and began buying up homes and doubling the density in the neighborhood. I led a neighborhood effort to fight the change, but in my opinion, only got lip service from the previous Mount Vernon district supervisor. So our house became an island in a sea of McMansions, and we began to look to move, and that's how I ended up in the Springvale section of Franconia, right by a branch to Calamo Creek. That experience has kind of informed how I view developers and their influence in the county, and that would inform how I would review land use decisions as a supervisor. Professionally, I retired as a senior executive after 30 years with the federal government. My background was primarily budgeting and finance. At my last job, I was responsible for developing the agency's budget that was submitted to the Office of Management and Budget, and I was responsible for defending it on the Hill. I managed a large staff that provided program support services for the mission offices. So my strengths are understanding budgets and addressing customer needs. And as a supervisor, I would consider my constituents to be my customers. I've been active in the community for almost 30 years. When I was in the Mount Vernon district, I was very active with the Neighborhoods Association, serving as both the vice president and the treasurer. Before that, I served on the association's budget committee, and that was when I first became aware to the extent that the county overfunds their budgets, and they have huge annual surpluses each year. And every year those surpluses are respent and nothing's returned to the taxpayer. I currently help count collections at my church, St. Lawrence, right up the street. And I've been a volunteer tax preparer for the past 5 years with the AARP tax aid program. In terms of the top 3 challenges in the community, the first for me is stopping the unnecessarily high real estate tax increases, which is making living in the county increasingly unaffordable. That's my top priority, and that would be the one I'd be advocating for on behalf of the Franconia constituents. Second priority is improving public safety, which includes getting rid of panhandling. Third is making effective land use decisions that support revitalization, but also balance the impacts to the affected communities. I will be discussing my ideas and solutions for these challenges when answering the prepared questions. So to wrap it up, I envision a Franconia district where we pay a reasonable amount for taxes, but not more than what is necessary. I envision a district with decreasing rates of crime and overall safer communities. I envision a district where the schools are given what they need, but not more than what they need, so that excess funding can be redirected to other priorities such as public safety. And I plan to work collaboratively with the other supervisors to make that happen. Again, thank you for listening, and I appreciate being here.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. So the first question we have to do, or series of questions we have to do, has to do with safety and security. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer. The order will be Mr. Beran, Mr. Welch, and then Supervisor Lusk. I'm happy to reread the questions to you after each candidate if you can't recall, because there's 4 separate questions here. So a member from Stratford Place submitted 2 questions on this topic. What measures are you planning to take to combat rising crime in the area? And can we get more of a police presence, for example, car patrols and officers around the strip malls? Terry from Queens Court asks, what will you do to keep speed limits enforced on all the major roadways that connect throughout our community? The Board of Trustees would like to expand this question with the following details, given there's been an increase in related questions during meetings with the membership. The Fairfax County Police Department, Franconia District Station, for September 2023 recorded a 15% increase in calls for service. Arrests for serious offenses were up 53% as compared to last year. We have witnessed crime creep into our area with an armed carjacking, armed persons firing weapons in parking areas in Kingstowne Center, the closing of some entrances to retail stores because of retail theft, and our vehicles being rummaged through to steal our belongings. Whether the perpetrators originated somewhere else in the DMV and migrated here to commit crime, or they are local, there should be a strategy in place to combat this activity. Whether you are an incumbent or a candidate, what have you done or plan to do to mitigate this activity and create a long-term solution? Mr. Beran.
Well, thank you. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, that I believe safety is the biggest issue facing our district. Of the entire county of Fairfax, the 2 worst areas to live in that have the most amount of crime, 2 of them are right here in Franconia. That's Groveton and High Bluff Valley. Well, first of all, this is not a problem that's going to be solved overnight. And I mentioned already in my opening statement that I believe that there's got to be participation with the police by all the people who live here. You know, you need to let people know that this is your home, and you're going to stand up and protect it, and you're not going to let the bad guys get away with it. That means calling the police, that means calling the tip line, that means getting involved and not just washing your hands up and say, you know, I'm out of here. Secondly, we need to do what we can to make the police feel that they're welcome, that they are in fact respected, And one of the things that I introduced about 2 months ago is the idea that we could approach HOAs, perhaps even yours will become one of them, that would allow the police officers to live in your community and you waive a part or all of the fees as a way of welcoming them into your community. Now, I realize that's not something that can be done very quickly, but it is an idea that has been welcomed by several of the HOAs that I've already approached. And it also gives them an opportunity to park their car when they're off duty right in the neighborhood, which again gives a police presence that everybody will find quite welcoming. And as you get to know who those individuals are and they get to know you, that becomes sort of community policing, which is also very good, very helpful. And it will lower the costs without having to return to the taxpayer to pay for those costs. So these are some of the ideas that I have. I also believe in the idea of community policing with neighborhood watch. I think everybody should be a participant in that as well. And then, as my opponent over here mentioned, the vagrancy, the panhandlers that are on the street. You know what I'm concerned about? First of all, I know that some of them are legitimately homeless and they need our help. They really do. So we would engage the local churches, mission churches especially, to help them in every way that they can. But we also need to make sure that we don't allow them to increase unsafe conditions out on the highway. One of the things that concerns me is if you have someone coming up to your window and you think that they're asking you for a handout and they happen to have a gun. That has happened. So we really need to eliminate that completely, make sure that it becomes, if not illegal, certainly frowned upon. Williamsburg has a great solution. They have a sign that they put up at every street corner that says it is against local ordinance to give money to anybody at the street corner. Take a picture of the license plate if you see this happening. My belief is all you need is that sign, and that will immediately chase the panhandlers away. We let them find other ways to make a living, like most of us do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Welch, you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
At a candidate forum that was held last week, hosted by the Mount Vernon Springfield Chamber of Commerce, every Democratic incumbent used the same talking point, that the county is the safest of its size in the country. And that's from statistics from the Major Cities Chief Association. What they fail to mention is we're being compared to jurisdictions with populations of over 1 million. So we're being compared to Miami, Baltimore, Chicago, et cetera. Crime's increasing in Fairfax County. And my source is not next door. My source is not next door. My source is the police department's own crime statistics, which show crime is increasing at an alarming rate. So for example, robberies increased 37% between 2021 and 2022. That's from the police department. Mid-year 2023 data from that same Major Cities Chief Association shows that robberies are trending even higher in Fairfax County between 2023 and 2022. Earlier in the year, we had a shortfall of 200 patrol officers out of about 1,600 authorized positions. Perhaps that's because beginning salaries for police officers in Fairfax County are amongst the lowest across the DC metro area. Recent recruiting has been high, but that's probably because of the $15,000 signing bonus. So what's going to happen when the officers fulfill the terms of that signing bonus? Are they going to move on to different jurisdictions? We need to be paying our police officers more at the top across the metro area, not the bottom. That's what's needed to give our police department the resources it needs to attract and maintain the best officers, which is the foremost principle of public safety. We can't have robust police patrols or police enforcing speed limits if we don't have a fully staffed police force. So as a supervisor, I will fight to ensure that unnecessary spending in other program areas will be reallocated to public safety. And let's put the funding needs in perspective. $10 million will fund a 5% increase in uniformed police officer salaries. And as I mentioned earlier, the school budget this year is $500 million higher than last year. You don't think we can find $10 million out of that? And finally, one thing I'm personally doing is writing an Ed Nuttall for Commonwealth Attorney. So we have a Commonwealth Attorney who will prosecute thefts of $1,500 as a felony rather than as a misdemeanor when the Code of Virginia requires anything over 1,000 to be prosecuted as a felony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Lusk?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll start by saying on the first question, what measures are you planning to take to combat rising crime in the area? One critical thing is already been pointed out, and that is to address the number of vacancies that we have in the police department. This is a phenomenon that is happening all across the United States. This is not specific just to Fairfax County, but we are making some pretty significant strides in that area. One, we did provide the $15,000 signing bonus for new recruits, which I think is definitely helping. But to the point that we're the lowest or at the bottom of the list in terms of compensation is not true. The board in July, effective July 1, we added additional funding to increase the police, and that's police across the entire spectrum of officers, particularly those that are in the patrol area, between 10 and 15%. So they've gotten a raise between 10 and 15% to be police officers. And that's basically to address the number of police coming in, but then also to keep police from leaving, right? Because if you think about it, it's like a spigot. You turn the spigot on, the water's coming into the sink. But if you got more water going out than you have coming in, your water level is going to keep dropping. So we acknowledge that we've got to work this on both ends, and we have. Second, I've worked very closely with the two commanders, one for the Franconia district and second for the Mount Vernon district, because our district straddles two police precincts. And what we've done is to go into the business community and talk about some of the real crime issues that we've seen. And I'll say this, and it's kind of a surprise to me that in some retail establishments, they will let customers come in, put items in the basket, and roll that basket out of the store and do what? Nothing. That was a decision that the retailers made. But what we've had to do is to explain to them that that's not smart, because what that does is it emboldens that person to come back and steal again. And this happens repeatedly. So what we've done is to connect with them, to help them know that we are going to be available when they call, and to help do enforcement. So what you've seen in Springfield Mall in particular is some of the largest rings that have been operating, not just in this region, but along the Northeast corridor. They've been busted with $30,000, $40,000 worth of merchandise. So we're going to continue to go after those who break the law in this district and make sure that they get stopped. And that's the way that we're going to help address this issue in our district. And on the speeding enforcement, we do have additional officers in the Franconia district specifically aligned to help with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, the next question has to do with maintenance of public land throughout the district.
Mhm.
Many of our residents have noticed that land along median strips and street corners appeared overgrown most of the summer. There are weeds growing along the street and curb. The grass is often tall and trees do not appear to be maintained. During our annual meetings, residents essentially are informed that the county does not have a role, as it is the responsibility of VDOT. If elected, do you have plans to work with the appropriate entities to improve the aesthetics of median, street corners, and public land throughout the district? And if so, what are they? Mr. Welch, you can begin.
Okay. Every morning, my wife and I go for a walk around the Springville area, and we pick up litter. And we're constantly fishing out trash from the branch of Calamo Creek that's in our backyard. And then I take my household trash directly to Lorton because I'm tired of paying a private contractor more and more money every month for less and less service. So we probably have to go twice as often as we would with all the litter we pick up in our daily walks. So my point is, we all have to take a role in helping maintain our public lands. I recognize that VDOT is responsible for maintaining medians and roadways. So I would forge relationships with VDOT local officials and the state representatives to make sure the maintenance schedules as prescribed are adhered to. And if not, I'll make some noise and raise that issue. I spent more than 30 years in the federal government supporting program missions, which requires bringing people together collaboratively. And I would do the same thing, working with VDOT and the state officials to make sure we keep those public lands maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lusk?
Yeah, thank you. I'll start by saying this issue is definitely the responsibility of VDOT. Unfortunately, what VDOT has done as a part of their ongoing sort of maintenance and operations is that they do 2 mowing cycles per year. So they cut the grass in the medians in these VDOT rights of way twice a year. What the board did in the most recent years, we added an additional mowing cycle, which the board paid for. But that's not necessarily good because we don't want VDOT to get off the hook for maintaining the roadway. That is their responsibility. So we're continuing to work with them to get back to a more regular schedule. But I will admit that this is obviously something that falls in their purview, but we will be working with our Northern Virginia delegates and state senators to help us get this issue addressed. Unfortunately, VDOT does have purview over this, and we do have to work within the confines of that. But we do have some residents, and I've seen them, who volunteered to go out in some cases and actually do the mowing themselves. I worry about their safety though, but I do appreciate that there are some who are so committed, and in some cases that can be arranged with permission with VDOT for those who would like to take on that responsibility. Not advocating for it, but just making the point that there are people who have done that. But I will commit that we will continue to look for ways to get more mowing cycles from VDOT as a part of their responsibility for the maintenance of that right of way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beran?
You know, I did have the occasion to speak with one of the foremans from the county that was responsible for maintaining the grounds out at the Franconia Park. And I asked him, I said, why is it that our grounds are not being maintained the way they used to be? And he said, well, we used to have gas-powered devices. We threw them all out 2 years ago in favor of electric, and they only last 20 minutes. Okay, perhaps VDOT's running into the same situation. I'm not sure. I also thought, you know, there are adopted highway programs that companies can sponsor a certain section of highway and pick up the litter, you know, and in return they get a sign in recognition. Perhaps we can make trimming the grass as part of that responsibility, you know, because it is important when you have people driving through the area, they get an impression of how the area is managed, you know, the pride of the area, whether it's a decent place to live or do shopping. And if it's not maintained, it looks bad on us. It lowers our property values. So it's not just a bad feeling, it's a bad monetary decision as well. And I do encourage as many different avenues as possible to look into, whether it's to work with or to force VDOT to do what they're supposed to do, or find other ways to get it done. I think it's that important.
Okay. Thank you very much. The third set of questions has to do with Fairfax County budget and taxes. Stephen from Stratford Place asks, we have seen an increase in property taxes in a time of hyperinflation. Will you make a pledge to not increase property taxes for the next 4 years to ensure that we not only age in place, but can live in place? Expanding on that question, Kingstowne constituents have seen the real estate taxes increase 21% over the last 5 years for an average townhome. A Fairfax Now, February 23rd, 2023 article indicated the Fairfax County budget for fiscal year 2024 is $5.1 billion, up $280,000 from last year, a 6% increase, largely due to an increase in real estate taxes. While the tax rate will remain the same, the average bill will increase by $520 for homeowners, thanks to an almost 7% rise in real estate assessments. Chairman McKay says this tax rate is far too high. Whether you are the incumbent or a candidate, do you agree with Supervisor McKay? If not, why do you believe real estate taxes should continue to increase? What is the return on investment to your constituents? And if so, what is your plan not only to avoid a continued escalation of our taxes and to engage the county in the hard choices of budget reduction? On this one, we'll start with Supervisor Lusk.
Okay, thank you. I'll say the incumbent, as the incumbent, I will agree with Chairman McKay on this point. The hard thing is that values increase because of sales of comparable units in our neighborhood. That's not done by the Board of Supervisors. It's because somebody in your neighborhood decided to spend more on the house, and that increased the value of your house as well. However, I do acknowledge that there is a point where this becomes a significant issue. And I mentioned earlier, for those who are seniors, making sure we do not price people out of this community. And that's one of the reasons why I've been so focused on making sure that we provide tax abatement, tax relief for our seniors who can qualify so that they can stay in this community. I said earlier, I'm very committed to making sure that we look for ways to sort of offset this over-reliance on the residential tax base. We've got to look for other ways to generate revenues. And that one of the ways is we can look at areas outside of residences, and that's going to be commercial and industrial. Those two areas are where we can have taxes offset the cost onto the average residents. Additionally, we've got to think about if there are ways that we can, support those who are thinking about working and living here as public safety professionals, as our teachers, as our other public servants, because they're doing so much for this community and they don't have the ability to do that. And how can we support and help them is something I'm very keen on trying to come up with a solution. And I'll say that, this idea on the return on investment, the most important thing that we do as a county, I believe, is we educate our children to become productive residents and become productive members of this community. And the way that we do that is through our investment in education. So the money that you're paying in taxes is really going directly to our kids and to their future growth and development. And it's also saying something about the companies that locate here. We have companies like Microsoft, Amazon Web Services. We have companies like Splunk and other Fortune 500s who come here because they know they can get the talented workforce to fill the vacancies that they have. And when they do that, they're making significant investments in this community in terms of taxes and resources that help provide critical services across this entire county. So I just want to make that point. And again, thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Beran?
I do agree with Mr. McKay's assessment that it's too expensive. Taxes are too high. But he apparently doesn't believe in that because he agreed to raise it anyway. I don't know. And frankly, the idea that the assessments are always just market driven. Well, I don't know about you, but folks, but Redfin says my house dropped ever since the interest rates went up in just the past year. And according to the assessments, it went up 7%. Well, that's not exactly what Redfin says. In any case, our taxes haven't gone up significantly over the last 4 years during the current term of the administration. And I think it's to the tune of 22.2% that the taxes have actually gone up. Yet our incomes haven't gone up nearly that, not at all. In fact, 3 times the costs have gone up versus the income. So what that does is it forces people out of the area. They can't live here anymore. And that's why we've actually had fewer people living here in Fairfax County this year than we had last year, and fewer this year than we had the year before. And that's a concern for me because that means that the people who remain now have to pay the entire cost, and that means your taxes are going to go up. If you elect me to be your supervisor, tax increase will be my last resort. I will look at all other revenues. And the idea that we can charge our commercial businesses more, well, guess what they do? They pass that cost along to their customers, which in effect means that we end up paying more for those taxes too. So you need to find other ways to attract more businesses into the area so that you have more income coming into the area, you have more workforce coming into the area, and more people paying taxes without having to charge the people that are here more taxes. That's the idea.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you. When I was out canvassing about 6 weeks ago in the Huntley precinct, I met a young man, a young professional named Martin, who's living with his in-laws, and we chatted a bit. After I got home, I saw he had emailed my campaign, and I'd like to share part of that email with you. I soon will be forced to move out of the state to afford the American dream. Many, if not most Americans my age, cannot afford to live in the areas we grew up in. We are being forced to leave and take our efforts and talents elsewhere, mainly because of the ever-expanding cost of community. I think you would be a better option, and I am supporting your run for supervisor. Martin's email expresses exactly why I'm running. Not only are we pricing out existing homeowners, but we're making it impossible for the next generation to stay in the county and raise families. What Martin is feeling is the 18% increase in real estate taxes over the past 3 years. What he's talking about how the board routinely votes to spend $400 million annual surpluses with nothing returned to the taxpayer. One of my campaign pledges from day one of my campaign is to only vote for an annual budget that does not raise real estate taxes. That may sound draconian, but it isn't. In fact, I have a responsible plan posted on my campaign website on how to make that possible. I would urge you all to take a look at that. It doesn't really involve difficult financial decisions. For example, the board raised real estate taxes 7% in fiscal year 23, which raised about an additional $200 million in revenue. Yet between the county and the schools, they ended with a surplus of $400 million. So why did we need that 7% real estate increase? What is really needed is the political will to actually require the school board to defend and justify their budgets. For example, when compared to fiscal year 20, when there were 5% fewer students, why does the fiscal year 24 school budget include 276 more non-school based positions? Why are there 61 new additional principal positions for the same number of schools? Perhaps there are good reasons, but my point is that FPS has never articulated a reason why they need those additional positions. So they are consistently overfunded, and then they unilaterally use that excess for such expenditures. As a supervisor, I would be asking those questions of the school board.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question has to do with Kingstowne Lake, the beautiful body of water here behind the Snyder Center. The Kingstowne Lake is a lot more than what many to believe to be just a lake. In fact, it provides a critical stormwater management service. About 50% of the water comes from outside of Kingstowne boundaries. Many of our residents do not realize they are being double taxed for stormwater management services. They pay a county stormwater management tax, which does not contribute to the lake, as well as a portion of the monthly assessment to pay for the lake-specific maintenance, insurance, the largest expense, and maintenance of the land around the lake. The Kingstowne Board of Trustees would like to continue to support the Kingstowne Lake as an amenity for our membership in the greater Franconia area. We are half responsible for the lake, and the Kingstowne Center is responsible for the other half under the umbrella of the Kingstowne Community Association. The questions: if elected, do you have any plans to help offset the substantial rising costs we incur with the insurance required to protect the membership from major water hazard liabilities? And do you share a vision that the Kingstowne Lake could also be a Franconia or county amenity? And we'll begin with Mr. Beran.
Well, first of all, it's not could be. Kingstowne Lake is an amenity for Franconia and the county. I have had the occasion to walk around the lake quite a few times, and I have met many of the people that walk around it. They aren't all residents here in Kingstowne. They love coming here to the lake no matter where they're from, and some of them as far away as Washington, D.C. So the fact is, we do have, I believe, as a county, a responsibility to help maintain the lake. I think that it is part of our amenities. Now, how do you do that? First of all, even if you do elect me your supervisor, which I would love it for you to do, I can't promise you that I can convince the other supervisors to fund any portion of it, because frankly, it doesn't belong to the county, although 50% of the water does. And perhaps even the pollutants also belongs to the county. But I can't promise you that I can convince them of that. So what I have already started to do is look at other options. I will tell you, I approached Innova. I said, hey, you're building a hospital not far away. Why not include Kingstowne Lake as part of your campus? Perhaps even at some point, we might consider naming it the Innova Kingstowne Lake. Well, at first they expressed some interest, but they eventually said, nah, you know what? We were spending enough money and building that new hospital, so we declined. So I said, well, you don't mind if I take it to my former client, UPMC? That's University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Innova's biggest competitor. And after a moment pause, they said, yeah, sure, go ahead, take it. So I did. I took it to the UPMC, and I've actually already started the conversation with them about possibly purchasing the M&N lot off of John Holly, and then putting an urgent center there as part of the Kingstowne facility and making it so close and convenient. They would love to have the lake. Now, this is just conversations at this point. Obviously, a transaction like this does take a while to work out all the details, but I've already started marketing solutions for virtually every problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Welch?
The board recently approved an ordinance change on September 12th that establishes a local stormwater management assistance fund. So that fund provides grants to communities of interest to help mitigate stormwater problems. Grants from the fund can be used for a variety of purposes, including repair of stormwater management facilities, erosion and sediment control, and flood mitigation and protection measures. So my understanding is that the lake gets a lot of runoff from outside Kingstowne. So I think it definitely fits that use criteria. So if elected, I would certainly support a grant from that fund that would hopefully mitigate liabilities affecting Kingstowne's insurance coverage.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Lusk?
No, thank you. So that program is an option, but it's an option for smaller stormwater management facilities. Unfortunately, this one's it's a wet, principally wet facility, which means it's a larger amount of water that's being captured and then slowly released from it. So what we've asked is for the next iteration of projects that Kingstowne be included at. Still here? Okay. That Kingstowne be included as one of the pilots for that larger lake option. So we have already asked and made that request. I just had the opportunity to do that at that meeting when this new program was initiated and made sure to include the facility here. I've had the opportunity to spend time helping clean the lake. I've gone out, I've run around the trail a number of times. I've also gotten to walk around it. It's a little different experience walking because you can walk and see the wildlife and some of the habitat, and it's a pretty amazing facility. So I see it as an amenity, and I think it's something that this community can be certainly proud of. I think I've had a conversation with the folks at Innova too, and they made the same point that Mr. Beran made, is that they are going to make a significant investment, over $750 million in the new hospital system that will be in the Franconia Springfield area. They're going to have trails and other amenities around that new facility, which will be available to those who are at the hospital getting services, but then also for the community at large to be able to come over and access as well. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like once it's all said and done. And, you know, I think the point that you made about being taxed twice was one that sort of resonated with me. And clearly, the stormwater tax, we do have to look at other ways that we can provide services to help people deal with the mitigation of flooding and other kind of water hazard issues that they have. So we will continue to look at ways to deploy the funding that comes into that tax, and then to look at ways to help Kingstowne with their specific problem as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next section of questions has to do with panhandling in the area. Vanessa from the Bedford neighborhood submitted the following question and concern. Do you have any plans to address the recent increases of individuals asking for money in our streets? This is a safety concern, and residents should be aware that the more they promote this by giving them money, the more they will keep them coming back. It used to be an issue only near Springfield Mall. Now we have them as close as Beulah, even harassing female drivers as they drive by or waiting for the light to change. And the board would like to expand on this question, given it has also been a concern said by other residents during our membership meetings. We've also seen people in unsafe locations along Van Dorn Street and sometimes holding up traffic in the middle of the road near highway exits. So do you want to stop panhandling in the district or county? And if so, what are your specific plans and timelines? So to start with Mr. Welch.
So the board has been kicking the can on this issue for 4 years. First, they claimed it was a First Amendment right, so they couldn't do anything. And recently, they've authorized $75,000 to study the issue. We don't need a study. Loudoun County has adopted an ordinance that prohibits curb-to-curb exchanges in public roadways between pedestrians and motorists, a violation of which results in a traffic ticket. That's been in place for 10 years. However, the way they implement it, they rarely issue tickets to violators. They instead issue warnings, and they refer people in need to county social services. The result is that the ordinance has significantly reduced panhandling in Loudoun County by imposing a financial disincentive to those who panhandle to solicit money with no real need, while enabling people experiencing financial or other difficulty to obtain the appropriate social services. I plan to introduce a similar ordinance as one of my first priorities, if elected, and would champion that the experience and benefits seen in Loudoun County to my fellow board members to convince them to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Lusk?
Yeah, thank you. This is a First Amendment issue for sure. And we can't deny that. I mean, you have the right to have a sign and write on it and stand. You don't have the right to stand in the street, but you have the right to stand on the corner. I can't prevent that. That's a part of rights that we have in our Constitution and also rights that we have as citizens of this country. But I'll make the point that we do need to figure out how we help the folks who have legitimate needs, and we've got to figure out what those needs are. So one of the things that this study, as you described it, Mr. Welch, is going to do is provide a survey of some of the folks that are on the corners and try to get a sense of kind of what is their circumstance, what is their condition, how can we identify ways to help them, because some of them I think would probably benefit from getting some training and employment, and that's one of the things that we want to consider and figure out how we can support and help. And then I'd say, you know, this idea that we might be able to regulate where there are issues of size. For example, if you're standing in a very small median, that median width, let's say it's like 2.5 or 3 feet, you're putting yourself at extraordinary risk to be in a median of that size. And that the question is there some way that we could restrict in certain instances the ability to do that, where it's not going to then be an issue of First Amendment rights. It's going to be an issue of like public safety for that person standing in that median. So we are going to be looking at ways to address this problem. The board is not sleeping on it. We're trying to figure out what's the best solutions and understanding the problem first. And I think that's always a good and important thing to do. Will be informative in terms of the actions that we take. So stay tuned. We will be working on this issue. So thank you.
Tony, can I respond? Because Mr. Lusk sort of contradicted part of what I said.
Yes, 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Sure. So it's not a First Amendment issue if the ordinance is structured properly. If it's a First Amendment issue, why has Loudoun County had it in place for 10 years? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Beran?
I had the occasion to sit down with the pastor at Rising Hope Mission Church in Russell. And he did share with me his concern about the homeless and about those people who are begging for money along the highway. You know, what it seems to be completely unrelated, I'll share something else with you, is that the Board of Supervisors had decided very recently, earlier this summer, that there should not be any political signs posted in the medial barriers. Just like Arlington, when you go down any of the roads through Arlington, you see that the signs are everywhere, but not here, not in Fairfax County. And the reason why is because they feel it's unsafe for anyone to go out and place a sign and take it back, you know, from the medial barrier. Isn't it interesting how it's okay for a panhandler to do that? And to assume that the panhandler is going to stay at the curb on the corner of the intersection. Meanwhile, the cars are not, hopefully, not up on the corner, not on the sidewalk, they're out on the road. So they will actually have to go out onto the road actually have to go to the media bear in order to get whatever contribution that person is giving. It is a public safety hazard, and you don't need a study to figure that out. In fact, I put my hat in the ring back in February when GOP asked me to run. And 2 weeks later, a man died on US 1 because he was panhandling and not one but two cars hit him. Well, I immediately made a video to that effect, and it's been on YouTube ever since. The fact is, it is a public safety hazard, and we need to address it. And what I said earlier is also true. You don't know whether somebody's approaching you for, hey, can I have a cigarette or can I have some money? Or he might actually have a gun. That makes it very unsafe, not only for them, but also for the drivers. They don't want to go down the road anymore. They're afraid of that. So we really need to address that, and we need to address it right away. One of the things I suggested to Mission Church, they have a beautiful new bus. Why don't you drive along? First of all, we need to put those signs like Williamsburg did that says it's against the local ordinance to exchange money out on the street like that, because it could be a drug deal going down. You don't know that. But the fact is, if you have that sign, not only are many of them simply not going to show up, but you'll also have the opportunity to send a church bus around and pick them up and say, look, please come into the bus with us. Let's take you where you can get a good meal. You can take a shower. You can learn about God and maybe get on a right path that you need to be on, and not out here on the street where it's unsafe for you. Oh, by the way, since it is against local ordinance to do this on the street, there's a police car behind us. So you either get in the car with us or you get in the car with them. And I bet you any money, they will stop panhandling very quickly. And the ones that go running away, well, they're going to find a new place to go. Panhandling is not a good thing, and we need to address that. It's a public safety issue. Thank you.
May I,
Yeah, 1 minute.
have a
30
little-
seconds.
one quick response? So it is a public safety issue, and certainly if someone steps out into the street and the police see that, they can be cited and ticketed for that. So that is definitely the case. I think there's still a human element here, and I'm sorry, I spent my 30 years in the county working principally along the Richmond Highway corridor, and really acknowledging that people are sometimes in situations that through no fault of their own. And we tend to blame the victims sometimes. And I'm going to be honest here. I'm grateful for the position that I'm in. And I know that I'm in this position because there are people who cared for me and gave me the support and guidance to make it possible. Those folks do not have that. They need help. And I think we have to be responsible in the way that we approach this. And we need to know what the problems are and be clear that we can provide solutions. The survey that you just pushed down into the ground is really important for us to know what are the situations for these folks, what types of assistance do they need, and how do we provide it? We can't just slap a sign on a post and say, go get services. If the services don't exist, it's not going to solve the problem. So it is a public safety issue. Thank you.
I need 90 seconds.
Yes, sir. Each other candidate's got it. So yes, sir.
I am very compassionate about people who are down on their luck. For 15 years, I was a single dad, also taking care of my elderly parents and my grandmother, who lived to be 102. The fact is, there are lots of people who are out on the street collecting money tax-free that aren't homeless. It has been observed by my very next door neighbor, who has actually taken pictures of a pimp who drops off these, quote, homeless people on the street and gives them a place to stay, feeds them, and takes half of the money that they collect. He even writes the sign for them. I even asked the pastor at Rising Hope Mission Church, are you aware of that? He said, yes, he is. So that's why I propose working with a church like Rising Hope to make sure those people who are down on their luck, who need the help, either mental health issues, drug issues, whatever the case may be, unemployment, homeless, we will make sure that they get the help they need. And those that don't belong there and are stealing from people and doing it tax-free, breaking the law, they need to be apprehended.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, very passionate issue.
Yes.
The next set of questions has to do with housing and commercial development. In recent years, we've all seen new housing developments be approved by the Planning Commission and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for our area. Additionally, the Board of Supervisors have approved a plan outlining a need for an additional 15,000 new housing units affordable to households at 60% of the average median income and below over the 15 years between 2018 and 2033. We have learned that affordable dwelling units are often added as a small percentage to new home developments, so the strategic plan for the overall number of new homes may be a lot higher. What is your long-term strategy to mitigate, one, traffic intensity on aging road infrastructure that was originally engineered for fewer homes, and two, impacts on schools and emergency services? What is your vision for new homes in Franconia? What would you consider the ideal distribution in terms of apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes? We have heard that first responders and teachers are in desperate need of housing they can afford at entry-level incomes. Do you have plans to make homes affordable for these incomes, which may be above affordable dwelling unit thresholds? And finally, what plans do you have to bring in new businesses, whether large commercial businesses or small? Do any of the plans relate to ensuring Kingstowne Center is preserved as a shopping center and services land use? To begin with, we'll go to Supervisor Lusk.
Wow, this is a mouthful.
Yeah, sorry.
3 minutes. Okay, let me start on the issue with regard to traffic. And I can admit that this is one that I completely understand and see and feel. I drive on the streets here. I'm a resident in this community. So believe me, I'm driving down Franconia Road. I'm driving down Van Doren. I'm driving through all of these arterials. So the thing that we have to make sure is that when we're proposing new developments, we got to make sure that those developments can adequately address the impacts that they will create. We have to be doggedly clear on how we're going to make sure that when these developments come online, we're going to have the infrastructure in place to address those additional cars that will come with those developments. Second, I say, it's really important to address the impacts to schools and emergency services. We have what they call a CIP, which is dedicated to addressing, capital improvement projects. Sorry, gotta watch out with these acronyms. So our CIP program defines what our future school needs are, and we are looking at this on 5, 10, 15, 20-year horizon. And so we're taking all the developments that are coming into the process for our community, and we're evaluating those developments as they need additional facilities for the schools, as they need additional libraries, as they need additional other public services connected to them. And then also the same with fire and police. I think you see that we're getting a new police facility in Kingstowne because the one that we have, unfortunately, is not large enough, can't be accommodated for the growth that we'll need in the future. Additionally, on the types of housing, I'll say, we've got to think about the more intense development going closer to our transit facilities. So thinking about where the Franconia Springfield Metro facility is, thinking about where we've just cited our new garage in Springfield, which will provide significant parking. We want to have housing, higher intensity housing near those transportation centers because people have options not to necessarily drive. I think, single families, I certainly would love to have more single family units in our development and in our community. The same I'd say for townhome units. It's just a factor of kind of where the land is left for the development, and that's where we're going to have decisions around what types of units get built. And then lastly, I'll say I support our public safety individuals, our fire, policemen, teachers, and others being able to get housing that is affordable based on their incomes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Beran?
Deep. Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question. That's an important question for all of us to consider. We all want to. Is anybody here that doesn't want an affordable house? Raise your hand. I didn't think so. The numbers that we've been trying to fill, the 15,000 net new housing units, was part of a study. I'm holding it here that actually was conducted in 2017. Now that's before COVID. Things have changed a lot in that time period. People have actually moved out of Fairfax County in large numbers, tens of thousands. So I would like to perhaps update this information to see if it really is valid in what adjustments we would need. And I would never, at the risk of single family homes, suggest or endorse building apartment complexes. Single family home, that's the American dream. Everybody if you remember from your childhood, the white picket fence around the house, I mean, that's what we all strive for, right? Now, some folks, it's not practical. They would prefer an apartment because they can't take care of their grounds, and that's fine. There's certainly a need for that. Also, is there anyone here that has a single family income in their household? Most people have two incomes, and yet affordability is based on a single income. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You can't hardly live in America anywhere unless there's two incomes coming in, whether it's two spouses or brother and sister, or perhaps a teenager. And frankly, throughout college, didn't you also have a bunch of folks living together in the same facility, sharing expenses? I mean, seriously, the market dictates affordability. The government should not be in price fixing. It really shouldn't be. Now, we can make recommendations, we can suggest, we can certainly control the zoning of it. And I do agree that apartment buildings should be near mass transit so that, yeah, you have the option for it, but not when it costs additional single family homes. There needs to be a mixture of all of them. As far as being able to make certain that we have enough room for our safety people, our first responders, our firemen, our policemen, and our teachers, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I approached HOAs and suggested the idea of reducing or possibly eliminating the HOA fees for their benefit. And not only is it good for them, it's good for the community too. So that's just one such idea, and there are many others.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Welch.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, one of my top priorities will be making effective land use decisions. I also believe development should be focused around the metro areas and other areas where public infrastructure can accommodate increased housing without increasing traffic. Those are also areas where the county allows a density bonus for workforce dwelling units. So that can provide housing for teachers, public safety officials, and others with lower relative incomes. I will not support land use decisions that do not have the backing of the affected community. And that comes from my personal experience I mentioned in the opening statement, living in a neighborhood where density was doubled, contrary to the comprehensive plan. And speaking of the comprehensive plan, I particularly have issues with the site-specific changes to the plan, where public infrastructure to support public infrastructure to support the development is lacking. The point of the plan is to have a comprehensive concept of land use in entire communities. That's why it's called the comprehensive plan. But while these site-specific changes are analyzed individually, the cumulative effect of these changes are not. So we'll likely have 160 new townhomes at the old Top Golf site, the ramifications of which were analyzed individually, but independent of possible changes at the Rose Hill Shopping Plaza. Land use matters is one of the reasons I pledged to only serve one term. I will not have an ongoing campaign account, and thus I won't be receiving donations from developers and others with business before the county. I believe accepting donations from developers and others with business before the county is a conflict of interest, and it's just plain wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the last set of questions has to do with senior services. Dr. Sarah Langley asks, what about our seniors? What are you doing and putting in place or have in place to ensure our seniors are getting the necessary services they need to live a harmonious and normal way of life and feel like they are a key part of the community? Also, there is a gap between those who qualify for Kingstowne Center for Active Adults and Mount Vernon Adult Day Center. The gap is Kingstowne is for adults who are independent, while Mount Vernon is for individuals who need around-the-clock care. There's a large community of seniors who fit in between those criteria, and there's no services for them. What are the plans to fill this gap? We'll start with Mr. Beran.
One of the things that I learned many years ago is that without faith and without family, you just can't survive in this world. You need the support of both your family members and also your faith. The people that you have come to know through church, through whatever organization you belong to, they get together. They create senior citizen centers. They support one another. That's not necessarily the job of the county or of the Board of Supervisors to make sure of it. Now, we can encourage it. We can help them. We can give them whatever assistance they need. But when it really comes down to it, it's faith and family that the seniors need. You know, we have two most vulnerable people, demographics in our culture. And that, of course, is our seniors and our children. We need to have those programs without question, but we don't necessarily have to rely on the government to control that, to fund it, to operate it. Because when you give government too much control, that's when you lose control. That's why I rely heavily on faith and family to maintain it. That's why I took care of my parents and my grandmother. I really did, up to almost to the end of their lives. In fact, a lot of the candidates are saying that they are lifelong residents here. Well, I'm a long life resident. My grandmother lived 102, so I plan to stick around for a while.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Welch?
So I mentioned in my opening statement that I've been a volunteer with the AARP tax aid program for 5 years. And I work out of the Sherwood Hall Library near Route 1. And actually, one of my colleagues is here tonight, so it was nice to see the support. That was when I first became truly aware of how many of our seniors were struggling financially. The number coming in to get their taxes done, who were living off a small Social Security payment and maybe a small pension, was eye-opening to me. The percentage of county residents 65 and older is projected to increase from 13 to 18% over the next 5 years. So the board recently approved a future of aging strategy, which sets forth a 5-year plan to guide the county in meeting the needs of older residents. The county, through the Office of Family Services, has some robust programs for seniors, although additional budgetary resources will likely be required given those demographics. So I think it's good to keep in perspective that the entire adult and aging services budget is $20 million. And I believe half of that is funded from state and federal dollars. So we're talking less than 0.5% of the county budget. So I certainly think funding the implementation of that plan, called the SHAPE plan, should be an easy lift. Also, I would like to add, in a recent survey, more than half of the county's older residents cited concerns about affordability as a barrier to living in the county. So not all seniors qualify for tax relief, so it's critical to keep real estate taxes stable for our seniors as well as all residents. And my plan or my pledge is to keep real estate taxes stable over the next 4 years if I'm elected will certainly help in that regard. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Lusk?
Okay, thank you very much. I think I mentioned I grew up in the city of Alexandria. I grew up in the city of Alexandria with my grandparents, who were just amazing people. And I had the honor to spend their last days with them and to be a part of their individual transition. So I know how difficult it is watching people age and seeing the importance of allowing them to age in place, being able to stay in your home if that's the choice that you want to make, and making sure we have the ability for that to happen. I also made a point earlier that, you know, we've got to have places where our residents who have committed their life to supporting the community, if they want to stay, they should have the option to do that. So I think you might have noticed on Van Dorn and Oakwood, there's a new facility. It's a 150-unit facility for those who are seniors. It's an amazing facility. It's absolutely stunning when you go on the inside. It's got great noise attenuation. The thing that I like is that there's great community facilities for those who want to, you know, they can play billiards, they can sit and read, they can be a part of a knitting or a game class. And what I didn't realize is that when we had the opening, there was a 80-year-old who came up to me and said that she wasn't sure how she would be able to stay in the community. And when this facility opened, she applied and she got a room, got a unit. And she said, because of that, she'll be able to have her grandkids come over. There's a little playground in the back. They'll be able to play. She'll be able to spend time with them. And she'll be able to continue to be engaged in the community that she spent over 50 years in. So for me, that's something that we definitely have to make sure that we're doing. And then the point about other services, I think, you know, some of our seniors struggle with, you know, being lonely, and there's some mental health issues around being seniors. And I think we've got to be aware of this, and we've got to be providing services that can support and help them. We also have food insecurity. It's unbelievable how many seniors don't have enough money to buy the food that they need, and we need to have programs in place to support and help them. This Shape of the Future and Shape of Aging survey that Mr. Welch mentioned has a whole bunch of recommendations, and we're going to make sure we do everything we can to support those who have committed their lives to this county and to this district. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. We had 3 minutes time for closing statements. We'll give you 4 minutes for closing statements if that's no objection. Matt, is that okay with you? Okay, thank you. As our timekeeper. So Mr. Welch, that would be you first.
So again, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm running to be a voice for fiscal restraint on the board. There are certainly positives from Mr. Lusk's term, and I truly respect his dedication and commitment to the county. But there's a but coming. So of all the future challenges facing the county, the biggest is increased housing unaffordability from escalating real estate taxes. And I just don't think his record shows he will meet that challenge. The Democrats on the board love to blame the lack of state dollars from Richmond as the reason for having to raise real estate taxes 18% over the past 3 years. But that ignores the spending problem, which is completely the board's responsibility. Mr. Lusk has now voted over his term to increase the county budget by $1 billion. And in those 4 years, only Supervisor Harity has advocated for even $1 of cost reduction from the budget submitted by the county executive. Re-electing the Democratic incumbents just means remaining on the path of increased unaffordability. I don't have deep pockets, any significant endorsements, or any slick campaign slogans. But I do have solutions and a strong work ethic for ensuring that the next generation can raise families in the county, and that people of my generation can continue to afford to live here. I think I can safely assume that I am the only candidate up here who has personally delivered door hangers to over 6,000 homes. Well, I did get help from my wife, but I think I did most of the 6,000. But I'm at my lowest weight since my high school football days, so no matter what happens, it hasn't been in vain. When deciding on your vote, I ask you to consider the following. Is it wise to have a board with at least 9 members of the same political party? Doesn't that encourage groupthink? Or should there be a voice on the board not tied to a political party? I ask you to consider if it's beneficial to have a person who's pledging to serve only 1 term. So any decisions will be made solely based on the interest of constituents and not for any personal political ambitions. Finally, I've enjoyed being here tonight. And if you have any additional questions that weren't asked or answered, feel free to email me at my campaign. I promise to respond. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Supervisor Lusk.
Thank you very much. I'll start by saying that I'm so committed to this community, so committed to continuing to serve. And I do this with a great deal of passion and dedication. I spend hours and hours each day. I'm doing things on the weekend. What I've tried to do as a member of this board is not be like all the other members. I've gone out into the community. I've gone out into our communities that have the greatest need. And I've gone into our mobile home communities. I've walked the streets of them. I've talked to the residents, and I've seen the conditions in which they live. And again, I say this, and I really mean it, is that I'm so fortunate to be in the place that I am. And as a result of that, I have an obligation to help others. And in viewing this suffering, as the best way I can describe it, is a need for action. So if you look at Harmony, I'm going to call out one of our mobile home parks here, Harmony Place. It is a place that I think has no harmony in some respects, because the owners have not maintained that facility in a way that any of us would say is acceptable. So what I've done is to convince the owners to make some pretty significant improvements. Before, they had rutted streets with holes in them, filled up with I don't know what types of fluids. And to see kids playing in that and not have a grassy area to play and not have sidewalks and not have trees has been just really difficult for me. And we've now gotten them to improve the road. We've gotten them to improve the sewer system there. I'm trying to get the water metering done so that each of the units has actual water metering so that they can basically know how much water they use and have a bill that reflects that. And then last, I want to try to fix the exteriors and the interiors of these units, because I think the conditions in which they are in is substandard. I say this only because I'm trying to express to you that I see this role as one where we're actually taking action on policy. And believe me, I've worked on a lot of policies. I was in economic development for 21 years. I was the director of national marketing for Fairfax County. I helped recruit some of the largest companies into this county, and I'm proud of that. What I'm not super proud of is I couldn't get one of those companies to come to the historic Richmond Highway corridor. I could not get one of them to make that decision. And the reason that they said they wouldn't is because there were no suppliers, there were no customers, there were no competitors, there were no partners that they work with that would be in that ecosystem. So that made me think differently about the area and say, if I'm going to make a change there, I've got to do something. I've got to intervene. And what I've done is help create a facility that will provide opportunities for those to get training and employment, and really to help incentivize the creation of emerging companies along the corridor. I'm just giving you a sense of how I look at this role. I'm looking at it from a different perspective, but I'm also looking at it from the vantage point of there's economic development, there's planning development, there's parks, there's recreation, there's all of these other amenities and services that we also have to be able to provide. But we can't forget the human side. There is suffering in this county, whether we want to admit it or not.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Beran.
Thank you. First of all, I love my home. I would imagine that you do too. Under my administration, I'll make sure that you can keep it. That's the most important thing to me. And that you want to keep it, that you want to stay here, that you want to retire in place. I believe that those people who have lived here long-term, they should not be forced to move out because the taxes have gone up. They should not be forced to move out because the safety has gotten so bad. We really need to address those issues head on and do whatever we need to make living here affordable and safe for everyone. That's so important to me. My opponent has suggested that he's a fiscal restraint, fiscal conservative, and I am also. I would like to point out that I drive a 10-year-old Chevrolet Equinox, and my RV has 128,000 miles on it, where my opponent drives a Porsche and a Range Rover on a part-time salary. I don't know how that works, but hey, that's great. In any case, I do want your support. I want your vote. I want to earn that, and I intend to, in doing everything that I can, making taxes the last alternative for you. I will find businesses to move into this area. I've already worked on that now, and I haven't even been elected. I have walked the communities. I have gone into the mobile home parks. In fact, I just received an email this evening, right before we started here, from someone who invited me into her apartment on Beulah Road. She says that it's so unsafe for her. She would like me to see what her conditions are, and I will do that. I also am perhaps the only candidate who's actually been in Kingstowne Lake. I went in there myself. I went in because I was making a promise to Innova that this was a good place, a good investment for them. So I actually had the water tested, and I'm here to tell you there's only some road salt in it. That's it. That's a recent test that we had. And I've actually, if you don't believe me, you can look at my videos on my website, and you'll see me and my waiters right inside Kingstowne Lake, and I did so with permission. Anyway, I would like to get your vote. I would like to earn it. And I invite you to go to my website at berangoodnews.com. That's BERAN. And it's not just a catchy slogan. It's how I live my life. Even my wife will tell you, I'm just way too optimistic. I'm always looking for the good side. And the truth sometimes hurts, but it's always good to speak the truth. So that is good news. I will tell you the truth. I will always be honest with you. I will not hide anything. The taxes are going up every year, and we need to change that. Thank you so much for your vote.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank all three candidates for coming out tonight. We really appreciate the time that you've given us and Kingstowne as a community. I appreciate all the homeowners that came out tonight. It meant a lot to me to see you all here, and the room has gotten bigger while I had my back turned, so that's great. We do have the room until 9 o'clock. So if the candidates would like to stay and mingle, they are more than welcome to. I would like to say, I feel like all of you really connected with me personally tonight. And then I realized that the clock is right in front of me. So that's what you were looking at. All right. Thank you all very much.